Hello and welcome to another wonderful talk of the Positive Future for Health podcast. And tonight we've got Andrew Mackay. Mackay, I didn't ask you. Is it Mackay?
It's Mackay. We always have to stipulate that.
I should have asked you first, isn't it, Mackay? Thank you, Andrew. And tonight we have Andrew's going to be talking about a very interesting subject that I don't really know about too much. I did have a little bit of an intro, but I'm really interested to hear more about it. And Andrew and we met by accident, actually. I was
Mm.
supposed to meet up to meet somebody for inviting them to come on the podcast, and I went all the way up to Suffolk to meet them, and I missed them because of circumstances. It just didn't work out. But Andrew was there, and oh my gosh, he told me all about what he's going to be talking about tonight. And I'll leave him to explain everything. And I'm so pleased that Andrew decided to come onto the podcast too. So, Andrew, can you tell us all about yourself?
Yeah.
Why are you doing all this?
Well, hello everyone. You have to excuse the Irish suntan at the moment. I've been painting a beach hut in Felixstowe down on the beachfront today, and even with the factor 30, it still got me. So
Oh
it is what
no.
it is. So I'm not. It's not like I'm embarrassed to be here. It's not like being in the school classroom at 7 years of age and being asked what the square root of 36 is, and you're just dumbfounded. Like, what?
What? What's that?
What do you ask me that? I don't know anything about vegetables. So it's nothing to do with that. It's purely the sun. So yeah, I've had an interesting life, as I'm sure most people that listen to your podcast have. Do you know what I mean? None of us get here by any easy means, so to speak. It's working in adversity, working through adversity, that we have our richest experiences and biggest lessons. I'd like really to talk briefly about my childhood, my younger years, just because I've been on this journey, like listening and like since forever, but really like hardcore for about 25 years. And one of the most important things to me has always been the backstory of the person I'm listening to. If the
I
backstory
totally
fits,
agree.
it sounds genuine, then you get a feel for someone. And I've always had that ability of being able to discern the bullshitters from people who speak from the heart, speak the truth. So a little bit about my backstory. I was quite a raw, energetic child, um, prepared to take um, what was it that Super Nanny said? Children would rather get bad attention than no attention at all. So that was my role within the family. Did stick my head above the parapet a bit too often, but
You did.
such is life. Um, and I always knew things were not quite right in the world, and that probably hit hit home personally at the Queen's Jubilee of all places. Now you weren't expecting me to talk about that, were you? I was seven. I was 7 years of age, and the Queen visited Ipswich, okay, for her Jubilee, and my dad was a school teacher, and he was running the school athletics program that was on that afternoon as sort of an entertainment. And so I was up there because my mum and dad weren't royalists at all, quite the opposite. So we was up there as a family sort of thing, and I was running around as I did. And the Queen turned up in her horse and carriage, open carriage, and she started travelling through, and all of the children started running beside her. And I was like, well, I'll start running as well. Do you know what I mean? So I ran with them as well. And I was running behind the carriage. And it suddenly dawned on me that she was staring right at me. And I'm like, it's probably from about 25 yards. And she's staring at me. And I'm like, nah, she's not staring at me. You know how you start double taking, looking around? It can't be me. And I looked around and there was no one within 20 feet of me. All the kids were running at the side of the carriage and behind it, whereas I was directly behind it, and I was running thinking, should I not be here? Do you know what I mean? You're not supposed to run directly behind the Queen. So all of a sudden I became very self-conscious, and literally, Althea, she was staring at me, and I wasn't getting a good feeling from it either. So
Oh,
I
wow.
kind of sort of slowed down and stopped. And the old thought kicked in: is bloody hell, I've even pissed off the Queen as well. Do you know what I mean? It's like it seemed to upset everyone. Can't do anything right. So that was very interesting because it was 100% looking directly at me, and only now coming into the work that I've been doing over the last few years since I came into holographic kinetics, that I realised that, well, there may well have been another reason as to why, because they say outside of this time frame, the world that we live in, this reality, that time doesn't exist as such. And if you're outside of this timeline, you can look up and down the timeline anyway. So if whatever's running her could see what I was going to be doing, come 2017 onwards, there was a good reason for her to be staring at me in a rather insidious way. So, yeah, that was an interesting aside to my childhood. I played a lot of football in my childhood. That was my escape. That was my opportunity to be creative and to be expressive without getting in any trouble. My role within the family was very much the scapegoat, which has a very interesting history. Do you know the history of the scapegoat, Althea?
No.
Okay, so
No.
it goes back to the tiny hats, and they used to use, they used to have a
The what? The tiny house.
the tiny hats, those that wear the tiny hats on their head.
Okay.
Shouldn't really mention the name because you might get your podcast, you might get a
Oh,
strike on it.
okay. Okay,
Okay,
got it.
so literally where that scapegoat came from was that they used to have a sacrifice that was there to basically absolve all of the sins and the wrongdoings of the community. And what they did was they used to inject them with, like, I think it was a jellyfish toxin or something like that. So the people saw that what it did, basically it numbed them. They weren't able to react or do anything when they were being sacrificed. And so the people thought that they were doing it willingly. That's how it was sold to them, that they were doing it willingly.
Wow.
That was where the first term of the scapegoat came from. And literally, that was to absolve the sins of everybody else.
It's really interesting you're talking about that. Talking about synchronicity,
Yeah,
we were talking in my healing group. We were talking about exactly those words,
yeah,
scapegoat and things,
yeah.
which is interesting. You're bringing it up.
Indeed, we love the synchronicities out here.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
So that was it was sort of tough childhood on that front, but no regrets, no grudges, because without being in that position, I wouldn't be where I am today. So
That's it. And it's wonderful that you were able to, I mean, you're not mentioning anything, but as a 7-year-old child being the scapegoat, that sounds tough. And I know that, we do, it's lucky that you found the football. I mean, we had Gareth Icke on the podcast the other day, and they all got into football, wasn't it? David Icke and Gareth Icke. And
yeah.
if you have an outlet for your passion, your interest, hopefully that creates some kind of where you put your strengths and your character. It's lucky you found that. It's great. So what happened following there?
So I then ended up leaving school, going into a printing apprenticeship, and that timing was perfect because that was just as Murdoch did the job on Fleet Street and opened up Wapping. So one of the best trades to go into, literally overnight, went like that. But I was in an apprenticeship. It was still, again, it was a good trade to learn. It was a skilled trade. It involved college and block release, stuff like that. So it was lots of fun. This sort of late 80s and early 90s became a bit of a hedonistic lifestyle, just with partying, I worked hard, but I played hard as well. And so it wasn't really until probably doing my counselling course, which wasn't until I was 42, that I realised that that lifestyle was very much a case of self-medication. You think you're just being a lad and you're having fun and all the rest of it, but you look back and think, yeah, okay, that was it was a form of escapism.
And sometimes you got to do that, isn't it? It's not until later that you think, oh gosh, that's why that happened, and
Yeah,
that's
and
what I was
again,
doing.
absolutely. And again, I wouldn't change anything to do with that because I learned so much about the world, about me, about people, and smoking the old ganja did open up my mind to other possibilities and other thoughts. Do you know what I mean? So it opened up my mind. It's quite interesting. There's a lot of friends who seemed open-minded then and very close-minded now, even though they went through a similar journey. So it goes to show it's not just about getting on it. There's something in here as well. Do you know what I mean? Wanting to know the truth and find the truth. And I think as a child and growing up through those 80s and 90s, the truth was important to me, both in acting and telling. And get me wrong, I was no saint, but I would always look at myself and my behaviours to see, what exactly was going on there. I had a younger sister who was, bless her cotton socks, she was quite manipulative, and her role in the family was to get me into trouble, and my role in the family was to get the discipline. It was her way of getting attention as well. So we had this relationship, cat and dog relationship, which was I had another older sister and then a younger brother as well, and so it was an interesting dynamic going on all the time.
Because it's like there is a dynamic, isn't there? And it's not just parents and kids and family. There's a whole world going on there, and each one has their place of experience and behavior.
Absolutely. I think the thing that most sort of has set me up in life is I've always looked at patterns, pattern matching, and why does this happen? Why does that happen within myself as well as the outside world? And I think,
Sorry, Andrew. I wonder whether that strong experience in your childhood that pushed you to look within, see patterns, to go into the healing world. I
yeah,
wonder. I
yeah,
always think
absolutely.
people have difficult early childhoods. It kind of fires up the creativity, look outside the box kind of thing, I think.
Yeah. Well, I had eczema on my feet as a child throughout,
Oh,
right up
wow.
until I left school, and
Gosh.
it was so bad. It was on the balls of my feet, and it was so bad that literally wouldn't feel it during the day. I'd just be out playing, running around as you did in the 70s and 80s. I'd come home, take my socks off, and the feet were bleeding. Basically, they were weeping, and really, at the time, didn't think anything of it. Do you know what I mean? You just got on with it.
Hmm.
I realised that it's a really good indicator that even when these things are going on, if your mind is focused on it, then it's going to hurt. But when you're out having fun and you're playing, just your mind wasn't there. So interestingly, skipping forward to past the 90s with that hedonistic lifestyle, I did a lot of traveling in the 90s as well, incidentally. Between 1990 and 2000, I used to work for a couple of years, save up enough money, and then travel for sort of 10 months ish. So I went to Southeast Asia and Australia, I went to South America, and I went to India, Nepal, and Thailand. 3 long separate trips. So obviously that opens your mind up to different cultures, different ways of life, and different.
Sure.
Yeah. So there was a lot of experience growing up. But when I was just about to turn 30, literally 29 and 3/4. Have you heard? I've only ever heard this once, and I've never seen it again. But when I did hear it, I was like, "Oh my god!" It was an aha moment about the 29, and I think I'm right in saying 29 and 3/4 year Saturn cycle with when you're born.
Oh wow. No,
Have you heard of that?
I've not heard of that. We do have a resident astrologer at Painfree that she's teaching us. So I'm going to ask her. What's
Yeah,
all that
yeah.
about?
So 29 and 3/4. I didn't find out until years later, but at about 29 and 3/4, I had a bit of a life crisis. Not in a really negative way. I just mean from the point of view of, oh my goodness, I'm going to be 30 in a few months. And all of a sudden I went from not having a care in the world about, owning a home, about, being more responsible in life, etc. It was just like, not me and my wife, I've been with her 35 years now. So, we've been together a long time, but we always knew we were going to have children, but that still wasn't entering my mind at that time. But at 29 and 3/4, it was just like a shift. It was like, honestly, it was like that. And I was like, right, we need to get a house, with time to settle down kind of thing. And it was years later when I heard about this 29 and 3/4 Saturn cycle.
I'm
And I
going to
was
ask
just,
her. I'm going to ask our astrologer. I'll get back to you. See what she
yeah,
says.
I immediately linked that straight away. And again, that's your intuition, that's your spirit saying, remember the change in life. So I don't know if that means at 58 and a half, I'm going to sell all my homes and go and live on a boat somewhere. But
We'll find out. So where does all the therapy? Where did the holistic ability and healing and things? Where does that all sort of step into your life, or you
okay,
step into
so
it?
that this all kind of synced in nicely with this change of lifestyle. Stopped going out on a Friday night, concentrated on playing football without a hangover and being stoned, and that was an enjoyable few years from that perspective as well. But it's once you stop that, and especially once Tina was pregnant with our first child, that responsibility hit hard. It was like, okay, it's all very well being living the good life, living the fast life, but you've got bringing a child into the world now. It's time to sort of take responsibility, and so I changed pretty much with that news. Stop, being Jack the lad, so to speak, and that leaves a big void out there. When you work hard all week, and then the weekend comes, and then you go out and you're playing football and you're partying. All of your that downtime, you've got that spare time, is no longer there to go to the pub and socialise with your mates, and that left a big void for me. So I started asking the big questions: what am I doing here? What is this place? I'd already picked up so much knowledge and information in the previous 15 years with the travel and being in so many different situations, that it was the natural place to go. And you know what? The first thing I did, came across, because the internet was fairly new at that point, I did the Tony Robbins life coach thing. Yeah,
Wow.
you've heard of Tony Robbins.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
So he did an expo, whatever they're called, down in London, and I went down and did that. So at the end of the first day, he's got 200-300 people, however many people were there, walking across hot coals, burning
Oh,
hot coals.
gosh.
And so really that I'm asking the question there, they're hot, and yet I've walked across there without batting an eyelid, no burn marks on my feet whatsoever. What is this place? If I could walk across coals and not get a single singe on my foot, what is this place? And that was the first kind of tip of the hat to, this place isn't what we think it is. It's something far different, this world. So
Different realities, isn't it? I mean, I teach self healing too, healing things too, and the words we say, the experiences we have, we're in the past, we're in the present, we're in the future. I mean, even that alone, with that human behavior, we can be somewhere else completely not present because of whatever trauma or thinking about the past. And in that moment, even if you're just thinking about the past, you're somewhere else. You're not present, are you? And at the very first stages of it, but there's an awful lot more than that, isn't there?
Yeah, indeed. So really, this time in my life was really my spiritual quest beginning. You know, more in earnest, shall we say? And ironically, that spiritual quest has kind of always been, ironically, born from vanity of all things. You can make it
Born
up.
from what? Born from what?
Born from born from vanity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the paradox of the world we live in, eh? So I said that I had eczema on my feet as a child, right up until I was 16, and then I was free of any skin condition for 2 years, and then I developed seborrheic dermatitis, which affected my face, and so no one really wants to walk around with a skin issue on the face. It's one thing having it on your arms or your legs, you can cover them up. But unless I walked around with a mask on, which I wouldn't even wear a mask in 2020, let alone before that. So, yeah,
So what
it
did you
was,
do? How did
well,
what?
quite interestingly, I went to the doctors when I first got it, and they were like, okay, well, we can, I was 18, we can give you some, it may have been 19, but we can give you this steroid cream. And even at that age, Althea, I knew not to touch steroid creams. And that's
Mm.
thanks to my mum. My mum was a little bit ahead of the game as far as, you know, she was doing yoga. Still does, even though she doesn't see herself as being spiritual. But I've kind of had a few one-liners with her over that. You've been doing yoga for 40 years, 50 years. So literally, if I'd have taken the steroid creams then, you know, to get rid of the skin condition, I probably wouldn't be alive now. Because one thing that using steroid creams do is it absolutely ruins your internal organs. And so, you know, I've read reports, interestingly, in the last few years of people that have died from, you know, some form of internal organ failure because they've been lifelong on steroid creams and steroids. So again, it was just that intuitive knowing that I'm not doing that. I will find a natural. There was lesser, like harsher medicines that I would use just to keep it. Wouldn't never get rid of it, but it would kind of keep it at bay. And
Yes.
then
And
when it
is
was,
this what took you on the path to HK, holistic
yeah, all of my
kinetics,
healing modalities, yeah, all of the different things I looked at was
holographic,
all
sorry.
alternative ways to try and find a way of naturally clearing it. And once we had our first child, I decided to stop using even like the Bactroban cream that I was using, and I was just going to try and clear it naturally. Then, of course, you got the stress of bringing up children, not much sleep, and all the rest of it. As much
Yeah.
as you love your children dearly, it's a tough game. Do you know what I mean? Parenting is a tough game these days. I think more than ever. But it was so the skin condition would, you know, get worse, and you know, I'd go through my ups and downs, my highs and lows, but always on this path of, well, I'm gonna find a way. The doctor said, oh, you'll never get rid of it, and I was just like, we'll see about that, mate. So yeah, that was the start of, you know, my journey was really based on that, and that's how I found holographic kinetics as well. Kind of, it was connected in a way. I had done a number of different healing modalities prior
Yeah.
to that. Interestingly, I was involved in a couple of healing circles, and they were absolutely amazing as far as learning about life and about who we are, what we're doing here, and traps, the entrapments and the traps that are set for us that we think is all happy-go-lucky. It's all dressed up nice and sweet and all the rest of it, but underneath, behind that veil, oh my goodness, Alfie, I witnessed some interesting stuff. Really did. So probably there was a guy called Cameron Day. Have you heard of him?
I haven't, no.
No. So he was doing podcasts. One of his podcasts was "Why I'm No Longer a Light Worker," and sort of talking about that sort of stuff. And so I looked into that. Now we talk about synchronicities. Okay, this was about 2013, I would say, 2012, 2013. And I was listening. There was another guy as well. I can't remember his name, but Cameron Day had done a number of videos on this subject. And interestingly, it kind of tied in with David Icke's work, because from the start of sort of 2005, 2006, I started reading David's work. And the great thing about David's work is all the stuff that I kind of learned and knew and experienced for myself was now all the dots were being joined. He joined all the dots, and I was just like, and so it was just instinctively.
He was one of the first people to kind of put it all out there as black and white and join the dots, dot connector, absolutely, as he says, isn't it? And yeah, I think that I feel like he gave almost like permission for all of us to develop our own skills. So Andrew, where did the holographic kinetics come into your life? What age were you there?
I would have been 47. That came about. Oh, just to mention that synchronicity with Cameron Day, and he was talking about the light beings no longer being a light worker. Obviously, I was working in a house, and I had to work in this house for about at least a week. It was a big house. There's a lot of painting and decorating to do there. And I was listening to all these different podcasts on this, and they all synced in with David's work, what David has said about different entities and all the rest of it. And I was just like listening to this stuff. And the house I was working at was on a road called Portal Avenue. And I thought, you couldn't make this up, because it was like going into another portal of another dimension of, we are.
Love it. Andrew, tell us about holographic kinetics. How does it goes on here?
Okay. So I came out of the healing circles for a number of reasons, and I went into counselling around about the same time. Actually, I did a 3-year counselling course, and the counselling course did one thing major league, and that was it made me realise I was more screwed up than I thought I was. So the one thing about doing counselling courses, you have to look at yourself. You have to dig up and overturn all those rocks and boulders.
Yes.
And when you consider 26 people started that course over the autumn and spring, 26 people started. 3 years later, 6 people finished it, and only 2 of us went on to be therapists. So It gives you a good idea of the dropout rate, because people look so far at themselves that they won't go any further.
It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not. And I always say, healing, the healing modalities are easy, but it means connecting to yourself, going within, and not everyone can do it. It's not easy. We come up against our gremlins and our dragons, I call them.
Well, my counselling tutor in my 2nd and 3rd year, Gillian, she said to the class one day, she said, it takes more courage to go to counselling than it does to go over the trenches at war. And they had a couple of guys in there saying, well, how did you work that out? Do you know what I mean? You're being shot out, so someone's trying to kill you. I said, yeah, as you go over that trench, someone's shooting at you, but someone's also got a gun at your back saying you've got to go over. Whereas counselling, you do it of your own free will, your own choice. And as you say, it's not an easy place to go. So I came out of that 3-year course with the knowledge that not only did I realise there was a lot going on, because I did attack it hard. I wouldn't, I don't do things by halves. And I realised, well, where am I going to go with this? I've just invested in 3 years here, so I sort of did some voluntary work and I was working with it. But I knew there was more. I just knew there was more to see. There was more for me to see within myself, more than anything. And I thought, I've spoken about this stuff and this stuff through my life and through my childhood, etc. But there's more. I can't put my finger on it.
So
So
your life experiences all the way through, and now this focus 3 years intensive looking at yourself. This must have been so helpful when you work with people with holographic kinetics. What sort
yeah,
of ways do you
absolutely.
take people through? Can you tell what's the what is it? What is holographic
Well,
kinetics?
that started in 2017, and as soon as I saw it and I read about it, I started watching videos. I started watching Steve Richard videos, and I was watching them all. Steve Richards was the founder of Holographic Kinetics,
Ah,
and I just knew instinctively this is what I've been looking for.
yeah,
This is because it's working with my own spirit. So when you're working with people, you're working with their spirit. It's not a healing modality. I'm not there healing anybody. You're
yeah.
just facilitating that person's spirit to heal them and their issues, etc. So I
So when
knew instinctively
mm, sorry.
that was 2017.
And then so you trained up on it,
Yeah.
and then when somebody comes to you, what sort of things what problems do they come to you about?
Okay, primarily it's used as a sort of mental health healing modality as such. But we both know the stigma attached to the word mental health
Yeah,
is ridiculous because anyone who's using any form of behavior, whether it be gambling, addiction to their telephones, to their mobile phones, to drugs, to alcohol, to shopping, um, you know, sex, whatever, any kind of coping mechanism is a form of mental health modality. But mental health modality is only really looked at the extremes, whereas everyone today can benefit from, because we use coping mechanisms to deal with our everyday life. And
sure.
so therefore, it's really been primarily used for that. But because everything starts in the invisible before it comes into the visible, it can be used
Yes,
for physical things as well. So we always look at things. I mean, everything in this room, you think, yeah, it's physical. We believe we live in a physical reality, but nothing in this room existed before it was a thought. I mean, thoughts aren't physical. Thoughts aren't in this reality. You can't see them, but just because I can't hand you a thought as such, it doesn't mean they don't exist.
yes,
So it's that consciousness, spirit, everything starts there. So
yeah.
if you're going to heal something, you've got to change something, you've got to go to the invisible first. You
Okay.
change the invisible to change the visible.
And you're talking about connecting with your spirit, or you help someone to connect to their spirit, or what do you
Yeah, yeah.
mean?
So, well, we have to understand that this holographic kinetics is born from a culture which is 60,000 years old. It's the oldest culture on the planet, the Aborigines of Australia. Um, and they were aware and have been aware for a long time of the universal law and that everything in nature is alive, whether that be and has a spirit, whether that be um, the plants, the animals, the rocks, the water, everything has a spirit. And
Yes,
so they were connected with nature. So, they didn't just survive in the outback where no one else would be able to survive. They thrived there because they were had a one-to-one relationship with nature. So, it wasn't a hostile environment for them. So,
so when
Steve,
somebody comes, I completely get that. I like the Aboriginal way very much, and I do feel an affinity with them. And it's interesting you're talking about solid, not solid, because it's another thing we've covered in the in my healing group. And so when somebody comes to you, how do you connect to their spirit? Is it a talking thing or a sensing thing, or how? What do you do with somebody? They come to your home, and then what? What are you going to do with them?
that's that's where you get the word kinetic. I mean, holographic is because everything is a hologram of everything else. So you'll know that through alternative modalities anyway, whether it's
Yeah,
um, reflexology, um, iridology with the eyes, etc. The other one with the ear,
Yes.
all those different ones. So
Yeah.
the
Auricular.
kinetic side, the kinetic side is basically where we have the direct communication with the client. So with any issue that you have, there's got to be an original cause that creates an effect.
Right.
Okay, so that original cause, as you are the creator of that cause, of that dimension, of that issue, as the creator, you as a creator have the power to change it. Your spirit does.
Perfect.
Okay.
Because you
And
met when we talked before, you were saying there's all the different layers, and yours is it what you asked me about what was it, the soul or and the spirit? You're talking about the soul or the spirit, I think. Is that right?
yeah,
And
well, the
you
soul is different to the spirit. I know a lot of people confuse the two, but the soul is basically like a dash cam on your vehicle for this lifetime. It comes in with you in this lifetime. This is why you get good results with things like hypnosis in stuff that happens in this lifetime. But the soul can't change the spirit, so it can't go back to previous lifetimes. It's just in this lifetime. But spirit
okay,
can change aspects of the soul, because spirit's been with us since year dot, if there ever was a
okay,
year dot. It's that awareness we've always had, and we've evolved through the gases, the rocks, the plants, the animal life, the humans. We've evolved to being human beings, these creator human beings today. So only our spirit knows how, where, and why something first occurred. So you have to go back to that original cause, and you'll do that by doing a test on the arm. It's a bit
right,
similar to kinesiology, but kinesiology is a muscle test,
yes,
whereas with holographic kinetics, it's an energy test. So your client will have a list of issues to look at, because you look at multiple issues in one session, and you always have to get permission to work with someone. Otherwise, you're violating universal law. So you must always get that permission. Obviously, if someone's coming to see you, you've got that permission, but you still ask anyway, both verbally, and then you check on the arm. Once you've done a calibration of the arm, holding firm for yes and letting go for no, then you ask permission from spirit to work with them on all levels and dimensions, and you get a yes. So
and how does the help for the clients? Is it through your senses, or do you see things, or do you have
no,
that information?
it's even more simple than that, Althea. You have to get the priority emotion that's connected to the issue that you're going to look at. Okay, so you've found the priority issue with the kinetic testing, then find the priority emotion. Say the priority emotion is chaos, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then you have to get the age in this lifetime where it is activated. Okay, so you'll then go through a series of questions. Is it below 15 or 15 and above? You find the age, so you're breaking down with the arm test, you get to the age, and then that's when they're on a table, sit behind them with their head on your hand, holding their STO points. I'd like to tell you what STO stands for, but it's a long old word.
Sternocleidomastoid. No,
Thank you. You did know what it was.
sternocleido. SDO. Occipital protuberance, and the bumps on the back of the head, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So you hold your index finger and your middle finger on those 2 points. And well, I'll get to that bit. You then ask the client to go back to that moment at that age, and basically their spirit will take them straight to that moment that you need to be in. And then what's happening is you're building a picture. It's like building a jigsaw puzzle. You're building a picture of what took place in that moment. Now, it doesn't have to be traumatic. It doesn't, it's, obviously for some people, there are traumatic situations they've been involved in, and spirit will take them to wherever they need to go. But it's just when that thought first got locked in, because energy is free flowing. Okay. Energy should just be free flowing. But the moment we capture that energy by not externalizing, so we're told off by our parents, for example, right?
Yeah.
And in that moment, and all of a sudden we're thinking we're no good, or
Yes.
I'm not loved, that first moment that happens could be at the age of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, something such as that, then that is the moment that started. And what's happened is because you haven't expressed, hang on, mum, I'm not like this, I'm not like that. You don't externalize it, you internalize it. And the moment you internalize it,
Yes.
the energy becomes trapped. So then
Yes.
that energy is potential energy, which then goes through a pendulum of action and reaction. And the more that thought is fed, the stronger it gets. So that thought started off innocent, but as it grew over the years, I always like to use the example of someone being called clumsy. Okay, you then become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But in actual fact, what happens is that thought you originally had then becomes a thought form. Okay, that thought form, because you keep feeding it, grows. And that thought form then becomes a life form in and of itself. And then if it carries on getting fed, it actually becomes self-aware of itself only, but it does become aware of itself, and it will set you up to be clumsy so it can keep getting fed, because everything in the universe
Yes.
has the right to survive. And then it becomes an internal entity that you created yourself. So although there's lots of
Yes.
interdimensional entities out there and all the rest of it, I deal far more with people that have created their own entities, both in this lifetime and previous lifetimes, that are then brought through being dying a victim and then having that reactivated in this lifetime to start another cycle of being a victim again in life.
This is
So,
extraordinary. So through muscle test, a kind of muscle testing, not muscle, spirit testing, you're guided to the emotional source of a problem. So people
yeah,
come to you with a physical, emotional, mental problem or something, and
yeah,
you clearly identify the emotional source and what age it was, and you take them back to that. Your spirit does,
yeah.
and then what do you what happens? Is that the healing act? Is that
So
how the healing happens?
okay, so once you've got the picture of what's taken place, what emotions they felt, what thought process, how they reacted, how they coped, and what thought process they locked in that moment, you then get a spirit to gather everything up and then clear it off the timeline. Because again, the spirit was the creator, you're the creator,
Yeah.
therefore you have the power to clear it. So you
This is
clear that
extraordinary.
dimension, that time track, but of course, because it's been cleared, you've then got to replace it. So you then replace it. So if you had the chance to come back and relive that moment, how would you change it? And you try and
Because just like when your life, wasn't it? When you were, it left a big gap because you can't just remove a lifetime of trauma and patterns and what do you replace? How do you then you replace it with good stuff or something?
yeah.
Do you?
Well, I'd like to encourage my clients to try and replace it with um, something that represents what happened then, where maybe they just stopped being able to um, express themselves. So in their new dimension, they are expressing themselves and they are able to say blah, blah, blah. And so what you've then on your new timeline, okay, because in the electromagnetic field, we've got 7 dimensions of time. We've got the present, we've got the past, um,
Future.
got the present, the past, and the future past. And then once we make those changes, you've got the present, the past, the present, the past, and the future. Okay, so you've got all of those 7 dimensions running at any one time because that's the electromagnet, that's the frequency that we live in. Okay,
Yes.
and spirit can access any of those points at any time. So you create this new timeline for your future. Otherwise, in the future, your future past, you're still going to have these things online
Yes. And
to
you
take
can't
through.
will Yeah, and you can't will these things away. You have to heal them somehow. And we can't make ourselves change. We have a whole sort of system running it, and you've explained it amazingly. And Andrew, can you share some stories about some people that you've taken through this? What happened? What the
Yeah,
result was?
well, seeing as you do a podcast and your treatment is about physical aspects, physical issues, I think
Usually, yeah.
a good one to tell you is one of my HK colleagues. I won't use the name to protect the innocent, but they had an issue. They were going to the hospital. They had an issue with their heart, and their heart, the hospital couldn't see what it was, and she was having to go back a few times. And even though, interestingly, actually, this brings in the other stuff that I do in some respects. Interestingly, even though we've done sessions in HK on the heart, as you know, through speaking with Richard Cumbers before, he has a Tesla machine and Pain Genie as well, which I use as well. But we had a look at the Tesla machine. So really, it's no different to someone going to a doctor and the doctor or the hospital saying, you've got this, you've got that. The Tesla machine is an incredible machine. It's 86% accurate. It's right up there with the MRI scan without being invasive and all the rest of it, because it's just a matter of putting on a pair of headphones. You can even use it remotely. I can work with someone with a photograph and an address and find out what's wrong with them remotely. So we found with the HK colleague that the main issue for her was her thyroid. Okay, so we did a session the next day on her thyroid as to why is the thyroid an issue? Why is the thyroid weak? Why is it not working? And so again, you have to go to the cause of the effect. When did that first? So it probably went back to her childhood, age. We cleared that moment in time, recreated a new time, then did the test on the Tesla machine, and it had changed in an instant. So all the numbers, had all come down.
Healing is immediate. Healing is immediate. When you do the right actions, the body naturally, automatically responds, isn't it? It's like turning on a switch of a light. That's how things work. Actually, energy works, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And
then I've got my own story as well, which is quite interesting. If I come close to the camera, you might just be able to see a little bit of a mark just in here.
Oh yes.
Okay, it's very faint now, but I'd had this mark here, this round mark about the size of a 5p piece for a good couple of years. Well, it would have to be a skin issue, wouldn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's got to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, I couldn't get rid of it. I tried everything. I tried hydrogenated water. I tried DMSO, which is a bit too strong for it, but I tried a lot of different things, castor oil, and nothing would clear it up. I then had a session less than a month ago. It was on the HK course I was recently on, and I said, let's have a look at this, see what it is. And in this lifetime, it was to do with being attacked in Honduras. Okay, that was what activated it again in this lifetime. But it went back to a previous life where I'd actually shot myself in the head.
Wow.
That was cleared. And now after 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it has been, within a month, it's cleared up. So,
wow. Because
yeah.
that's the thing, we're not just physical, we're spirit, we're feelings, we're thought, we're lifetimes, and everything works interconnected. And in this world, we think we're trained that you have a symptom, and this is how you get rid of it. It's drugs and operations, and that's it. Nothing else to see here. But I'd love to invite onlookers, our guests, to ask questions. If you want to ask questions, please do. So, what if it's physical things? It's so you had that mark, and what kind of things have you treated with people? What kind of symptoms have you come across?
Well, there's all sorts, really. I mean, like I say, mainly it's people come to me because I'm on a counselling website. People will see me on there, and then I'll offer them both options. But I'll always say, look, you're better off with this because it's a cheaper, any counselling session. Any counsellor will tell you you've got to do at least 6 weeks, and that's just to scratch the surface. And then you're going around in circles anyway, and you're just really going over the same stuff.
Well, that's why I like this HK, that it's very specific, isn't it?
It's one session. You don't have to come back and have another session. That
wow.
change is made, and it's permanent. This is the point.
What if it's back pain, for example, that you've tried everything and just nothing works? I mean, what would you do for somebody? How would you address that?
Well,
It's
that back pain has also been created at some point in this lifetime. It's been activated. So you would go always, 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 you go to the initial cause. Okay, so with something physical, what you might do is you'll go to that moment when it's, and it would may have been as a child, may have fallen off a swing. And in that moment, you also had emotional catharsis going on, and you locked something in, and that became a stress point in the body. And then later on in life, in your adulthood, it's been that stress point has been reactivated. But what we find is we get spirit to come after clearing the initial moment. We get spirit to come up the timeline. What's happened recently to, reactivate this back pain? Go to that moment, spirit, first thought. So spirit is always your first thought. That's the most important thing. When you're working on the head, you're holding their STOs. First thought. It's so people have come to me and said, "I'm spiritually enlightened." I'm like, "Oh, good for you. Nice one. Get on the table." And do you know
great.
what? Do you know what? Honestly, Althea, every time I won't entertain it. It's ego. Honestly, they're the most difficult
Oh,
clients. You never get anywhere, and then they say, "Oh, this is no good." The best people I have are people that come in with. I say, it's uncanny how many people come in and say, I'm not really spiritual. I don't really know anything about this sort of thing. Say, it's fine. The only thing you've got to do is when I ask the questions, is say the first thought that comes into your mind. That's your spirit. First thought, as you're building that picture of what's taken place. And do you know what? They're superb. Obviously, in my earlier days when I was inexperienced, it was a little bit more difficult because you're playing around with the process. You're not sure what you're supposed to be doing.
yeah.
But now, once you get the process locked down, and because I'm quite intuitive and I'm quite in tune with my own spirit, my spirit's working with me when I'm doing a session. It will pop that thought into your head, ask that question, ask that. There you go. There's the key. So you're always looking for the key moment, because when you get to that key moment, Althea, guess what happens? The STO points heat up. They can get red hot. And
Wow.
then when the person with their spirit clears that time track,
Yeah.
they cool down. It's like an
Fantastic.
on-off switch.
And of course, it's the same as the basic sort of thing. If somebody gets stressed, your shoulders gets tight. Your body and your physical body and your emotions and thoughts, it's all interconnected, directly connected.
Yeah.
So,
So that would be the example for back pain. But the most important thing to remember about HK, and there's a bit of a paradox involved, because we know there are victims out there, people that are victims of circumstance, they have been, but people who are victims of some heavy shit, that's happened because it's the universe bringing it back into balance. They've been a perpetrator in the past, and therefore they have to experience what they put on somebody else to bring the universe, their own universe, back into balance. And so
uh,
the biggest thing about HK is taking that self-responsibility. People who are prepared to take responsibility for what they've created themselves, they're the people that just, it's literally, evolution is a thing, but not what
so,
Darwin said. It's a spiritual evolution.
so what happens if you are living karmic rebalancing in this lifetime, and can you still get rid of horrible situations or traumas or maybe
So
abuse
this is
or
if you
physical pain?
listen back to this, because you'll see there's little things I've dropped in all the way along that you didn't pick up the first time.
Okay,
But what I did say
I'm
is,
going to do that.
yeah, what I did say is that if you die a victim, yeah, in that victim mentality, and
Mm.
then as a youngster, as a baby, it can be a conception, because you go right back to conception. That's when the spark of life comes in. Okay, so it can go right back to conception anytime within any of the 3 trimesters. That could be re-triggered, and you go back into that victim mentality, and then you become a victim for the next lifetime as well. So it seems unfair. Don't get me wrong, it does seem unfair, but at the end of the day, this is a hardcore spiritual school, and we're here to learn.
Well,
And
that's the thing, isn't it? I do
yeah,
believe that I do believe in past lives and our higher selves or our spirit, and I do believe that we choose the exact details of our life to grow, to experience. And I've I feel like I've lived 57 years here, and I feel like as I've gone through. um, I can't go beyond a certain challenge. The challenge keeps coming in my face, and if you don't listen, it stops you doing what you want to do. And if you don't listen,
yeah,
the lessons get the message, I call it, gets louder and
yeah,
louder, so that you have no choice but to
absolutely.
face that damn
Yeah.
thing. That oh
What,
God, come on then.
what you love as well is that people who sign up for HK session, they would want to come and have a session. Things will happen. Something will happen to them. Or things will happen to them just prior to coming to a session. A couple of days before, like, oh, you wouldn't believe what happened to me. And that spirit's setting you up to say, you need to have a look at this. Do you see what I'm saying?
Ah, yes,
Because
yes.
we're creating our own reality all the time. So your spirit will be like, okay, finally, you're going to, because spirit wants to move on and evolve as well. They don't want to be stuck in, the moment you're looking outside of yourself to heal or, to get what you want in any way, shape, or form, the moment you're out looking outside of yourself, you're disempowering your spirit, you're disempowering yourself. So your
I
spirit
totally
will just
agree.
say,
I totally
yeah,
agree.
your
Exactly.
spirit, your spirit will say, put his feet up, sit at the back of the bus, pick out a big Cuban cigar, and just say, "Go on, then, you get on with it. You let something else run the show." And it's like, for me personally, I was like, always, I was very fortunate. I had that stubbornness where it's like, I need to sort this out for myself. I can't have someone else sort it. This is down to me. And that's what got me through the healing
Mm.
circle situation and all of these things in the past where taking that self responsibility and saying, no, I need to. And just for whatever reason, I was just fortunate that I had that innate thought process always running through me.
You did. You had it from an early stage. And Anthony would love to ask you a question or say
Um,
something.
well, although we have to do it for ourselves, we still have to come to you for the treatment. We can't do it online.
Well, the reason for that is a very good question. The reason for that is we can't be in two dimensions at once. So when you come to a practitioner, what happens is that you make an agreement, and that agreement is sacred. It can't be broken by anything or anyone once that agreement is made. And therefore, I can then guide your spirit to go into a previous life as such, or issues come down the genetic line. So you might have to call in the spirit of the ancestor who first created that issue. So because the client can't be in two dimensions at once, a practitioner is required. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with you about people who say they're enlightened, because I remember one chap telling me I am enlightened, and he had the most terrible bad breath. And I thought, you're not enlightened. No way. Anyway, where are you, by the way? Where would one need to go?
I'm based in Ipswich,
Oh, yes.
which is in East Anglia. We do have practitioners in Kent and in London. There's one in London, there's one in Kent. There's a couple of others around as well, so whichever is really closest to you, really. So whereabouts are you based?
I'm in London. I'm in North London.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure Dan is still working out of London, so you should be able to find his details. If not, you can get my details off Althea,
Yeah,
and I can get you put in contact with Dan.
thank you. It just sounds
And
very interesting.
I'll put your details, contacts, Andrew, with the recording, so you'll have that together. And so do you visit people? They have to come to you. Do you go to their places? Because some people
No,
have difficulty getting
it's
about.
it's one of the most, it is the most important stipulation with HK, because it's a great question to ask, because my favourite saying from Steve Richards, who founded HK, is he who enters a game of another is subject to the rules of that game. But what do we mean by that? if I come to your house out there, okay, whose rules are they in your house?
Yes, I see what you mean. Yes.
Yeah. So as above, so below. So
Yeah.
the boundaries are set up here at mine, so that it's a place where nothing else, because you're working on such a deep metaphysical level,
Yeah.
it's not something that can be messed around with. So, you know, if you think your swimming teacher was a hardcore realist at school, you know, swimming teacher are always hardcore. I mean, no mess about with a swimming teacher, because you know he's got children's lives in his hands. So the swimming teachers, as life instructors, will tend to be really, really strict. Well, you know, you can add an extra couple of notches up the pole for Steve Richards, because he has to be. It's such a powerful modality, and it's not something that can be messed around with and sort of toyed with and played with. So,
Yes.
you know, the aspects of that is, yeah, people do have to come to you because they're coming into my game, which has been set up metaphysically for safety and protection.
Okay. And of course, I was going to ask about safety and protection, because it's not easy going into dark places in our world and our emotions in past or whatever. You know,
No,
healing can be very, very challenging. So I'm glad to
absolutely.
hear
But
that.
this is another really, I've already mentioned about the need for taking responsibility. I have had clients in the past that weren't prepared to take responsibility for what they had set up for themselves. And what happened from that is they didn't have any changes. They didn't, I mean, they might say, we've got a situation where you will never make anyone worse with HK. The worst case scenario is they'll go out with what they came in with. But if they come in with the intent they want to make changes, those changes will be made, because it's always the invisible first.
Oh, yes, Anthea. Go ahead, Anthea. Do.
So, as well as intent, do you have to have belief in the?
No, belief isn't necessary. So a lot of my clients, because they come through the counselling, you know, they'll see me on Psychology Today, for example. They are not necessarily spiritual people. They don't have the belief, and that's absolutely fine, because they still have a spirit. Might not believe in it, but if they have that intent, their spirit will be like, okay, you've got the intent to change, let's make changes. So spirit, you know, it's mind first. Your mind has to direct spirit where it wants to go. So the most important thing about HK is when you finish the session, is you realise what you've done in the past to set up what you don't want in life. Whereas when you leave a session, you leave with the knowledge and understanding that, okay, now that I know that I've been setting up things I don't want in my life, I'm now going to set up and create things that I do want in my life. So, you know, it's so empowering from that perspective.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah,
It does sound.
it was life changing for me. It really was.
But I mean, you're talking about one session. That's really extraordinary, and people have been suffering for many, many years, even from young ages, and that's really extraordinary. And this will be all on your website, Andrew. Have you got a website to show what it's all about, and testimonials, or?
Yeah, there's universallawhealing.com. And I finally, just after many years of deliberating it, and when I say many years, it's more like decades, but I decided to start sharing my experiences and my knowledge and what I've learned over the years. So I started doing a podcast a couple of months ago. I think I've done 5 so far. And they've been going well. So I've got 26 subscribers. But you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, because of course, you're talking about the I get the words right, holographic kinetics, but you do other modalities, and they'll all be on your website, Andrew, and about what you can offer people is all on your website.
Yeah. So there's a description of how the Tesla machine works on there. There's a description of how the Pain Genie works on there. What isn't on there at the moment is I've gone into helping Richard distribute this Aloha 7 energy medicine or elixir, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
That was a game changer. I started taking that. I mean, I'm a pretty healthy guy. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I eat, good food. I live a pretty good lifestyle, but I have to say I started taking this, and although I didn't notice a lot of people notice immediate effects with it, but with me, because I'm I'm in a good place anyway, I didn't notice anything as such until I realised one day I could read my alarm clock at night time when I woke up when I couldn't before. So it actually improved my night vision.
Wow.
So this Aloha 7, I decided, because it was so good, it's so powerful, and it works so well, I said I'd help Richard distribute that. So that's not on the website as yet, but there is actually, I have actually set up a separate website called aloha7.com, which, the feedback we're getting off that is amazing.
I'll put that together with the recording, this recording, Andrew. And Andrew, we've come to the top of the hour, just over. And I just want to say, this is just the tip of the iceberg with Andrew. And if absolutely, and if you do want to get in contact, this is interesting to you, please do. Don't suffer. I don't believe we're here to suffer. Certainly, we're here to learn things, I think. But if you're suffering and this sounds interesting to you, go and have a look at Andrew's website and do get in touch with him and sort it out. Sort out your problems, because we're not here to suffer, I don't think. Andrew, it's been absolutely extraordinary. Extraordinary. You've taken us into new dimensions, and I enjoyed that very, very much. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on this call today. And get in touch. The recording will be out very, very soon, and I'll get that to you as well, Andrew. So, and of the two websites, it'll be with the recording. Andrew, thank you. What can I say? Thank you so much. That was really extraordinary.
Thanks for the invite.
Pleasure. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.